Welcome back to Taking Back Monday. I am so excited that you decided to say goodbye to the Sunday scaries and hello to a brand new future of work. My name is Alyssa Nolte,
And I'm Dr. Kimberly Harden.
and we are going to have a fantastic conversation. We did a little bit of a back and forth before the recording button was hit. And, sometimes you just know it's going to be a great, great conversation. And I have high hopes for this one. So let's get right into it. What is your origin story?
Well, I worked in corporate America for many years, and I saw firsthand how certain people were undervalued and treated like temporary employees, or as I call them, guests. And so I found myself coaching new employees on how to navigate these environments and also coaching leaders and other staff members on how to embrace, communicate, and collaborate alongside individuals that they labeled as others. And so the turning point for me came when I realized that leadership approaches were designed for comfort, not for connection or collective success. And that insight led me to create frameworks and write my book, Cultural Intelligence, a Blueprint for 21st Century Leadership. And so the book is really designed to help leaders understand, adapt to, and leverage different perspectives. And the work actually centers around building a trust-based, high-performing workplace.
So
Where
you say
people
that,
just don't survive Mondays. I want everyone to thrive. And so that is the goal of the book.
hell yeah. I always tell people like Monday used to be my favorite day of all time, and it still is now. I've moved on to kind of back into the world of entrepreneurship, so I'm back to loving my Mondays.
Mhm.
But you said that leadership was designed for comfort. What do you mean by that? Tell us more.
Well, historically, certain people were in leadership positions, right? So certain groups of individuals that, typically we call them marginalized communities. I don't call them marginalized. I call them undervalued. And so in the workplaces that worked in, uh, I was usually the only woman, the only Black person. And so how do you navigate a space where you're the only and you're
Yeah.
expected to not thrive, right? You're kind of relegated to this weird position
Yeah.
where you're
This
expected.
attitude of you're lucky to be here, so shut up and be a part of the crew
So
because you
yeah,
should be happy you're even here.
absolutely. I actually had a manager say, "Who do you think you are, Michelle Obama?" And he meant it as an insult, and I flipped it on him, and I said, "Oh my gosh, she's wonderful! I can't wait to meet her."
Yeah.
And years later, I actually did meet her. And so, when I went and got my PhD, there was a lot of, well, who do you think you are? And why are you doing this? And you should be happy in this position. Um, Not thinking that I have personal growth, right? I have personal growth. I have professional dreams and aspirations. And so people try to put you in this box. And so I had to, work with these leaders and ask them, why do you think I should be in this box? And why do you get to dictate the box?
Yeah.
And so, once we started having those real conversations and helping them realize their bias, they're like, oh, yeah, we didn't realize we were doing this.
And sometimes people do realize that they're doing this and they do
Sometimes
it
they
on
do.
purpose, right? Like I've
Sometimes they
run
do.
into to leaders who the wild things people say out loud. Sometimes I'm like, "You do you realize how you sound right now?" Like I had someone once recently tell me that he purposefully goes out of his way to break people down so he can be the one to build them back up. And I was like, "That is so manipulative, dude." That's like you said that out loud. You admit that with pride, as if that's something we should all be doing as leaders to make sure that we have like our employees have a dependent relationship on us because we're the ones who, brought them back up and we built them up and we made them.
Right.
And and that's like not an uncommon attitude I'm finding.
No, it's not. But I always have the conversation of, why do you need to do this?
Yeah.
And think about the ramifications. What if you break someone down and they're not able to recover?
Right. Well, and a lot of times, this is my hypothesis. A lot of times, like I think those people are just small and they know they're small and they know that the people around them are great and they don't want anyone else to be great unless they are the ones who made them great.
Exactly. And so I have a conversation. So I developed a theory in graduate school, which is lead. And so that's what I believe leaders should do, right? So lead is love, enthusiasm, awareness, and development. And
Yeah.
so my job as a leader is to show you love, not the romantic kind of love, but I love you enough to call out help you overcome your flaws. But I
Yeah.
also love you enough where I see your greatness and your potential. Right. And so even when I was a professor, I would tell my students, I'm here to serve you. Like, I don't work for the university. Yes, the university pays me, but ultimately, I work for you. And my job is to help you get to where you want to go to. So we can have conversations about where you want to go, if you're stuck, if you want to pivot, all of those things. But as a leader, your job is to be a steward, right? Servant leadership is huge. And I think people are getting away from that. It's back to being a self-serving, um, I've made it to the top. And it's
Yeah.
always interesting to me when people say I'm a self-made, person. No one is self-made.
No.
No one is self-made. I mean, yes, you may have done all the work yourself, but if you developed a product, someone had to buy the product. So therefore, your customers help make you, right? So just the whole idea of I can do it alone, I can work in a silo. Americans are very individualistic, but that's not reality. Reality is we should be operate in a collectivistic society because what you do impacts me and what I do impacts you. Whether or not you see it right away, but later on you'll be like, okay, I can connect the dots.
Right, right. Hindsight is always 2020, right? We look back and we say, okay, yeah, I can see how those things connected to my success. I have a story that I always tell on this call, and you're exactly right. Like we don't always realize in the moment how much we need the people around us. And when people ask me like, what do you think is the most successful like thing to help you make a startup, right? For
Mhm.
me, it's always community. It's always the people who know me for what I want to be known for, who are willing to open the doors for me, who are willing to push me through those doors sometimes when I don't actually do what it takes to be successful. And that's how our companies are great and that's how we as individuals are great. So we have to figure out how do we build those relationships, but as leaders, how do we make sure that our team knows that we believe in them and that we have expectations of them and that we'll hold them accountable when necessary, but we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that they are successful alongside us because their success is our success.
Absolutely. And I think it starts with leaders telling their employees, we are a partner. We are in a partnership, right? It's kind of like a relationship. In
Mhm.
reality, it is a relationship, right? So we're here to help one another to achieve the corporate goal. But an effective leader knows that the real goal is to help you elevate. So, for example, succession planning is a big deal. And it's always interesting when people are like, oh, well, there's no one who can take my place. If you don't feel anyone can take your place, then you did not do your job correctly.
Yeah, 100%. Or if you don't feel like you can take time off because no one can cover you for 2 weeks or 1 week or whatever the time is, or I've had a lot of people who are like, well, I can't possibly go on maternity leave because my job might not be here when I come
Right.
back.
Right.
Right. And so if you've created an environment as a leader, and we did a little bit of this in the pre-recording conversation, but like it's my belief that it's on the leadership to have the courage to create environments where people can perform to their best. And if your team is not performing to the highest standard, that is on you as the leader. Either you hired the wrong mix of people, you aren't empowering them in the right way, or you're not creating an environment where they feel as if they can thrive. And that's your fault if you are the leader and no one else's.
Oh, I completely agree with that. I believe all organizations should have a disaster resiliency plan, meaning that individuals are cross trained. So if something happens, you, for example, can step into my role. I shouldn't have to know where or try to figure out where the files are and the passwords and all those kind of things. Some of those things should be centralized, right? That's where SOPs come in, right? So when I was working in corporations, we would always have a binder of here's all the stuff.
Yep.
And if, here's, you know, paper copies, electric copies. I hate it when people say, okay, we're going to get rid of paper copies because what happens if the server crashes?
Right. We all saw all of the airlines basically be defunct because of one update from one software company. And all of a sudden, nobody can fly anywhere because CrowdStrike rolled out an update that failed. Like,
Right. And it was interesting with that because my understanding was that SeaTac Airport in Seattle, that was the only airport that was still able to navigate manually
Yeah.
and get some flights out.
Yeah.
So, everyone else shut down.
We used to have what we called our oh shit binder. And it was basically like all of the stuff that if anything happened to me or one of the other founders, we would keep them in the trunks of our car. And we both had copies, and everyone in our family knew where the copies were and what
Mhm.
was in them and how to access it, whether they were employees or not. Because there is like that preparedness, and obviously we've never had to use it, which is great.
Mhm.
But having that paper and just knowing that peace of mind that hey, if shit hits the fan, then like we're good. We still have our stuff.
Yeah, but I also use that for my personal stuff, right? So I tell people all the time, we're all going to pass away at some point. So your people need to know where things are, where your life insurance
Mhm.
policies are, your passwords, your life insurance policy, all of those things, right? So I have all of those things, my account numbers and all of those kind of things in a fire safe lockbox, hidden in a place where only the person who needs to know it knows where it is, right? So it's always interesting to me that people aren't prepared. Um, I don't know if they think that nothing will happen to them, but life be lifing. We know that life be lifing, and so people need to know and be prepared and inform your people.
So what do you think then is, considering all of the leaders that you've kind of talked to as part of your research, what do you think is the biggest blind spot today's leaders have?
So I've interviewed quite a few leaders as part of my work, and the thing that really strikes me is when I ask them what their biggest fear is, they inevitably say they're afraid of acknowledging what they don't know or publicly admitting what they don't know. And I try to remind them that there's so much power in saying, I don't know. Let me find out. Let me get the right people to help me. There's a lot of things in my work that I still don't know. That's why you hire people who are more experienced and more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
It's a coaching mentorship relationship between my team and I. I know certain things, they know certain things. They have an area of awesome that maybe I just don't like to do. So you have to surround yourself with good people, knowledgeable people, and not be threatened by them. Because, when I was young, my dad used to tell me, even a fool can teach you something,
That's
even
true.
if it's how
Sometimes
not
it's
to be a fool.
right. Sometimes it's not what to do.
Yeah, exactly. What not to do. So I think people need to um, overcome the idea that acknowledging that they don't know is a weakness
Yeah.
and look at it as a strength. And even when I was teaching, I would say, students would ask me questions like, you know what, I don't know that. Let me go investigate and get back to you. A lot of respect and power in that.
For sure. I feel like I say I don't know all the time, right? But I've also worked with a lot of people who don't want to admit that they don't know things, especially Americans, right? Tell me how okay, number 1, let's do a little bit of psychoanalyzing. Like why do you think that people are so afraid to admit that they don't know something? And 2, if we know the underlying cause, how do we change whatever that is so that people feel psychologically safe enough to admit they don't know what they're talking about?
That is a great question. And it's a question that I ponder all the time. I ask myself, is it the education system's fault? Is it the parental's fault? Is it society's fault? Or is it the individual's fault? That we have a stigma around, I would say, probably the education system that, we spend all the time going to college and we should know these things, but things change constantly. And for people to say, I don't know, they feel less than if they say they don't know.
Yeah.
And, my response to that is, I'm not trying to make you look bad. I'm not trying to make you feel bad. I'm trying to help you grow. And, my best friend and I go down rabbit hole conversations every single day. A random question. So we were talking about eggplants. And, we were like, oh, eggplant is a vegetable. Well, actually, it's not. It's a fruit. Right. And so how did we find that out? Well, we were like, okay, well, we have a question about this. Let's go investigate, and found out that produce that has seeds is considered a fruit, not a vegetable. Um, we learned that lemons are actually a man-made fruit. So those kind of things, right? So for me, it's to have fun with learning things, and I think people need to get back to that joy of learning things, instead of saying, "Oh, you're stupid." I think probably some of it stems from our parents and our family of, "Oh, you're stupid," or even colleague, childhood friends, "Oh, you're stupid," so on and so forth. And that's not true. That's not true. You're only stupid if you don't want to learn.
Yeah. I always tell people, and I have yet to figure out how to hire for it, but to successfully work with me in any kind of role, I always tell people you have to be relentlessly, obsessively curious because I am a relentlessly, obsessively curious person. And when I get into something, when something really gets my interest,
Hmm.
I will go all in on trying to understand that thing. So if you tell me you want me to build you a, whatever plan to do whatever outcome, I will come to you with that thing so well researched and in depth and like all the thought has been put into it.
Hmm.
And I kind of expect the same of the people that I work with, right? Like you don't have to go to my level of pure obsession where all of a sudden your social media algorithms change and it's only showing you that topic.
Right.
But like I do want people to come and say, this is the plan. I believe it is the best version of what you can do, of what it should be based on this amount of time that I really thought about it. I've really put the deep work into thinking about it.
Hmm.
And so when people come to me with like surface level, you can tell they spent like 15 minutes on it instead of like really thinking it through. That's when I get kind of annoyed and frustrated because I'm like, I want my team to be curious and almost obsessed with understanding how it's made, how it works, what we should be doing. And that's hard to screen for. Like, how do you say to anybody like, how curious are you? I'm sure they'd be like, sort of.
Exactly. And I mean, it's really challenging to find people who are as passionate as we are,
Right.
especially about our work, right? About our business, because we are the one who developed it.
Yeah, this is my baby. And no one's gonna be as passionate as I am, but I'd like you to get to at least 85%.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's when I go back to my team and say, you know what? This is truly a partnership. And I hired you because you have expertise and knowledge, but I also have these expectations of you. So don't just Google something. I mean, I can Google it myself. I need you to like go in and do like
Yeah.
some research on certain things.
Yeah.
And, like you, sometimes things don't work out with individuals and you have to replace them. Because, we're flying at a million miles a minute and you need that partner who's going to be like, okay, I need you to slow down. This is what I found out. And if you do X, Y, and Z, this is going to happen. Right. So
Yeah.
I need the cause and effect of all, like we do the whole pros and cons and all of those kind of things. But I need people to show me my blind spot.
Yeah.
And I can you probably agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that's hard too, right? Because if you don't have a relationship with your team where they feel like they can point out a blind spot
Mhm.
on you, like how will you ever know? Because one of the things that I hear on this podcast, and I've done almost 100 episodes now, that they think the biggest thing that leaders need to work on is their self-awareness.
Mhm.
And that's kind of a common recurring theme in this conversation. So, how do I, as a leader, either one, develop the ability to look in the mirror and say, hey, here are your gaps, here are your blind spots, or two, develop the relationships required with my team so that they can reflect those back to me so I can be self aware, so I can be a great leader?
Oh, that is so good. I love that question. So I think people have, so Dr. Dolly Trug out of, I believe she's at NYU, she wrote a book called The Myth of the Good Person. And I think everyone wants to be a good person, but my response to that, and I actually ask the questions in a lot of my sessions, how many people think they're good? Everyone will raise their hand. And I ask them, what makes you good? And who makes someone else bad? Because there's always sunlight and moonlight. So if you're
Right.
sunlight,
There's always an other, right?
exactly. So sunlight, moonlight. So what makes you good? And so some people will say, well, I'm kind and I'm this and I'm that. And I said, okay, why not just say I'm kind? Being
Yep.
kind doesn't mean good, right? So plus it's subjective, right? What you believe is good, I may not think is good, right? So I think people really hate to look in the mirror because they're afraid that they won't be considered as good.
Yeah, I mean,
And
it's hard to look in the mirror and be like, okay, here's a gap. So you asked me at the beginning of this why I started the podcast, right?
Mhm,
And I told you a little bit about like the corporate therapy concept, but there was a second part to it. I always felt very nervous in these kinds of digital environments, in these kinds of like talking on on a Zoom call with someone, and I knew that if I wanted to be a successful entrepreneur in this new age, it was more about personal brand and less about product.
mhm,
And so I had started building a personal brand. So that's another reason that I started the podcast. But I had to look in the mirror and say, Alyssa, you're awkward and weird on these Zoom phone calls. You stutter and you start to get a little breathy because you're trying to talk without, looking like you're not knowing what you're doing, and you never look into the camera. And so I had to have like a hard conversation with myself to say, okay, this is your gap. And then I started the podcast to force myself to fill that gap in practice. Now I like podcasting is no big deal
mhm.
for me. Um, but I had to do that, and it was really, really hard because it kind of sucks to look in the mirror and say, hey, you suck at this. And now do something about it.
That part. Now do something about it. And congratulations to you for having the courage to look in the mirror and say, okay, these are my perceived flaws, right? What can I do to overcome them? Right. So with someone who has dry skin and they're just going to complain about dry skin instead of like going to their dermatologist and getting the appropriate, medication for it. Um, I also struggle with certain things. I don't, I'm a very personal, private person. And
Hmm.
so when I see people posting all of these things on social media, and I'm like, why are you sharing it?
Right. These are things you're saying out loud. What are you doing?
Right. It's called private for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so it's always interesting to me. And that's something that I have to deal with. And it's like, okay, having conversations with myself about, vulnerability and what's the worst thing that could happen and all of those things. So I'm starting to open up a little bit more, not a whole lot. I'm doing it in baby steps, but yeah, that's something that I have to look in the mirror and be like, okay, what is this issue that you don't want to share things that everyone experienced, but you consider them to be private?
Yeah. So, considering all of the incredible people that you know or aspire to know, who is leading the charge? Who is taking back Monday?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. Um, well, first of all, I would say that it's people who have shifted from seeing work as a series of tasks to seeing it as an arena for growth and connection. And, when I say connection, it goes back to what you mentioned about curiosity. Having the courage to connect with people that may not look like you, think like you, all of those things, and have a conversation. And one of the people, well, two people actually, that I think are taking Mondays back is Lewis Howes. I don't know if you're familiar with Lewis Howes, but he has a great podcast, and it's called oh gosh, Greatness. Um, can't think of the name of it, but anyways, I see his face. It's something around greatness, and every week he has a different person on his podcast, and I love that Lewis is very curious. He always has a notepad and he's always taking notes on what his guest says. And I
Hmm.
love that.
And say, hey, I've got my notepad right here.
Yeah. If
I
you,
just Googled it quick. The School of Greatness
yes,
podcast.
yes. I should know school, right? With the School of Greatness. So I really love that he does that. And he's stark contrast to Oprah. Oprah's considered, like the mother of media.
Yeah.
But Oprah irritates me because she doesn't let her guests finish their thought. She always like interrupts and puts
Yeah.
in projects her own. Well, I think this. Well, you ask them. Let them
Right.
finish the thought. You can say I agree or disagree, but please let them finish their thought.
Yeah.
And the other person that I'm really loving right now is it's a podcast called it's a YouTube uh, channel called The Pivot, and these are with three former NFL players. They do talk about sports, but they also relate it back to real life. And I love how they talk about their challenges and their failures and what they would have done differently, even in their private life. One of the players, his name is Channing Crowder, and he was very transparent and vulnerable about how he didn't have a relationship with his biological father because his parents had got a divorce and his mother had badmouthed him and so on and so forth. And so they didn't really develop a relationship until he got drafted into the NFL, and how much it hurt him when his father passed away not too long ago. And so it's, the fact that I don't think really society talks about how parents can cause that tension between children.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love that they're being transparent. And I think that's part of taking Monday back is being transparent, being vulnerable, but also taking some time for self-care and healing.
And then having the awareness to know that you need both of those things.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone wants to be He-Man and She-Ra, and that's not necessarily the case.
So, if someone is really connecting with you, if they want to learn more, where can they find you online?
I'm all over LinkedIn. I post several days a week on LinkedIn. I share weekly insights on leadership and cultural intelligence. My book, Cultural Intelligence, A Blueprint for 21st Century Leadership, is available on Amazon and other bookstores. And like I said, it's a practical guide to build trust, adapt confidently, and really strengthen their teams. And you can always go to my website, hardenconsultinggroup.com. So HARDEN consultinggroup.com, where you can learn more about my coaching, my workshops, my public speaking engagements. So yeah, I would love to connect with you and your guest.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking back Monday with me. This was a really great conversation.
Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate it.